Hello everyone, my name is Clover, and today we're going to be checking out support duos yet again. This is a tier list I really like making because I find there's more value in making a duos than a typical traditional tier list where you just rank heroes A, B, C, D. With this tier list, the depth part of it is you can actually see where these heroes fit in different compositions and therefore get a better sense of how they rank amongst their peers, and that's a value. So someone like Zenyatta, for instance, we will put him C tier, where he's got evident weak spots, but he also has some really good parts to his kit. But with the support duos, you can actually see that. You can see in certain compositions where he's properly protected and enabled, he's going to be top tier. But where he doesn't have that level of protection, then he's going to be bottom tier. So you see those fluctuations or nuances that you wouldn't get with a typical tier list. So that's a value of that. I think that's a good segue into our criteria. So criteria hasn't changed since the prior episode I did. And yeah, we're still looking for the individual power of these heroes. So whether or not your hero can pop off or not is kind of like another way to define it. Some heroes are going to be better than others. That's just naturally how it works. The second part to this criteria is the difficulty level of the duo. And what that means is, in theory, some duos are going to be really strong. But if you put that in the hands of lower ranked players, well, it's not going to translate as fluidly. Lower ranked players are going to be making a ton more mistakes, which means there's some dependability or game sense or some level of coordination that you need for that composition to work. The third part to this criteria is the synergy of the duos. So like the Zenyatta case, if people are there to protect them and mitigate those weaknesses, that's going to be a better synergy for that duo and therefore be higher in the tier list. Furthermore, if that duo has conflicting play styles, that's going to hurt their rankings. You don't want to have two opposing play styles, someone like Moira who wants to be up and close in the fight, and then someone like Ana who wants to most likely play from range, right? You don't want to have that. You want people to play in the similar play styles and roles. If they kind of mold into two, then that doesn't hurt them. It just means they're more versatile. So all those things combined equated to this tier list that I've pre-made. And now onto the tier list, you can see that there's 6 different tiers separated by a little tier break. And it's the top 3 tiers I want you guys to focus on because those are the 3 that I think can work in almost every case and be very good. There are some ones that I had to cut because, with Kiriko being added so many more variations that, I had to cut some of them. So a lot of the counterable and niche ones can be used, but they're either one-dimensional, work in very specific cases, or there's just better ones out there. And then in the void, the bottom 2 tiers, those are ones that, you're fighting an uphill battle. So I will give us a basis for the rest of this tier list. I want to go kind of fast. Like, we're already 3 minutes into this. And I want to go fast because there's just so many. I can't really talk about them all, but I feel like at least in these bottom tiers, you can understand why they fit in this. Like, it should be self-explanatory. Who's there to protect Zen? First and foremost, no one. What is their healing output? Fairly low. And then what is their damage output? Also very low. So there's just nothing going for them. Maybe the Mercy Brig, healing output, not really good. You got Brigitte, who's a fairly hard hero to learn. Mercy is kind of got hit pretty bad with the transition from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, because she's someone that could have relied on the secondary tank to peel for her, or the secondary tank to just have enough HP pool to live long enough, or peel for the other, DPS or other support. So, supports have more responsibility because they need to focus on more things while also being attacked more frequently. And Mercy just can't multitask. She's a single target healer. So that's why I feel like she got pretty hit hard by the transition. And the void tier, El Glasgow, Mercy, Lucio. Funny story, I used to play scrims in Overwatch 1 as a support, and occasionally we would find these teams that would run this backline. It's like the non-diveable backline or something or another. And essentially, you would just have this composition that wouldn't have a weakness per se or a dive target. So for rush comps or dive comps, you just didn't have a clear target. But this composition is so bad at healing that you could just poke out the Mercy, or you could poke out like the Wrecking Ball, where they just become useless. And yeah, so as much as it worked in Overwatch 1, it works in Overwatch 2, and that is garbage. Then we move on to, Brigida Lucio. That was once a meta comp, and I'll explain a little bit further. Then we've got Kuriko Moira. Mercy Moira. Talked about that a little bit in the previous one. Is there another one? I might be missing another one. I don't know. We'll find out. And then we've got Ana Moira. So two interesting ones there is going to be the Brigida Lucio. So Brigida Lucio was meta at one point in the Jotes era when Junker Queen had her original show. But because that's been nerfed, that means she's not that third hero that kind of made that, or third healer, I should say, that made that composition work. Because this duo does not have a huge amount of healing. And it's very team comp orientated, or it requires a lot of teamwork. And that's what really hinders this. And I have to put in the avoid. Not enough healing, too hard to play. Yeah, it's got to be down here. In the avoid, with the Ana Moira, this is a weird one. My take on this particular comp is Ana is the issue. And I think Ana took the biggest hit of all the supports with the transition from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2. And it's because she has no mobility and she really relied on that secondary tank to help her out, or she really relied on traditional maps. Now that there's push and control, filling out half of the game modes and half of the maps there are in the entire game, it just makes Ana that much less viable because she just doesn't have a way to escape. And so she's a very easy dive target, almost like Zenyatta. She does have ways to protect herself, but she's either using those abilities to protect herself and not offensively, or it's a skill shot that is really hard to hit, or just overall her cooldowns come very infrequently, and it's her uptime is fairly low. You know, people have been saying reduce Ana's cooldowns, and I think Nade could say the same, but I think Sleep Dart should have higher uptime by reducing it to 9 or 8 seconds. And that way it's long enough that it's still punishable, but there's more uptime. And I think that would further distinguish her as her support characteristic as being the only support, at least right now, that has a stun. And that's very big. Because the only thing that separates Ana and Baptiste is that Ana is only better than Baptiste at long range healing for dives. That's it. Baptiste can still work in dives, but yeah, like that's the only thing that Ana has over Baptiste. It's ridiculous. You know, Baptiste has the same healing numbers, has verticality, the damage level fairly the same, depends on the range, of course. And the overall amount of healing and tools that they have to enable their team is probably in favor of Baptiste too, with Lamp and Regenerative Burst. The rework, by the way, makes it seem like Baptiste has a Mega Pack as a cooldown, which is insane, because he also has damage and Lamp and mobility. Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's my take with the Ana Moira. Ana is just that much more diveable. So if you reduce her sleep, that would probably fulfill her out to be more of this shutdown hero, a high skill hero that gets rewarded by her shutdown ability, because Sleep Dart is still a skill shot. So that's my take on that. And we move on to the counterable and niche. And for this one, we got some of these comps where there's just they're better comps out there. I can't really say that they're avoid worthy. Like, I can almost put the Ana Moira up here. I think it's just, I'm gonna put the Ana Moira actually up here. I can't say these guys are avoid worthy because they're not going to be garbage, but I also don't think they don't have anything going for them. So like, Moira is the worst support there is in the entire game. You'll see she will never move past to quite all right. And that is because she has no ranged healing. Her healing is finite. Her healing comes in waves, whether or not she actually uses her heal orb, because sometimes people might use their damage orb. And the range healing really hurts her because all these other, like Rico, Brig, Baptiste, Ana, have ranged healing. Moira does not. And that really sucks in a very chaotic game, especially in low ranks where people want to flank. You're not going to be able to protect, impale, and heal everyone out. And you really rely on your teams to be more grouped up together. That's just not the case anymore with Overwatch 2. People want to spread out because that's kind of how you have to play. And because the playstyle forces that type of Because the game forces that type of playstyle, Moira inherently just finds less value. The only thing that makes Moira good is her escapability. So if you're an Ana or a Zenyatta and you're struggling to live because your team is not protecting you properly or you're positioning improperly, then that's when Moira can find value. So that's the only case. She's an adaptive pick. Another comp that I like to talk about is the Brigitte and Zen. I feel like that's still a great hero, but that falls right under the second part of this criteria, where it is so incredibly hard and requires such a level of coordination that you just have to put it down here. It's so tough. You could put it in the avoid, honestly. But I think the damage potential that you get from Zen could mean that if you're skilled enough with your particular hero, Brigitte somewhat knows what she's doing, then this comp can work, because Brigitte is still as good as she was. I think, like Moira, just how the gameplay format has changed has hurt Brigitte, although Brigitte hasn't really lowered, right? She didn't take as much of a hit as Mercy or Ana has, in my opinion. But yeah, with the peel potential of Brigitte, repair packs, fun fact, repair packs plus Inspire is the same amount of healing as Mercy's normal healing. So just keep that in mind. But this comp also has two very good defensive ultimates. Damage potential is there. It's just really tough to play because you got to make sure your team doesn't feed. It's a very low healing comp. Then I think I want to... Okay, we have one more here. We got the Brigitte Moira. That's kind of the same thing as the Zenyatta, except you have less damage potential, slightly more healing, more survivability, but you lose out on a lot of damage. And Brigitte is a really tough hero to play. She's the most unintuitive hero to play because of that fact. Very contradictory, because she's a melee hero that wants to play from range. She can hold corners like a tank, but can't actually hold that space. She only holds those corners to protect against flankers, but can no longer combat tanks anymore because her bash doesn't have the stun effect. So that little reworked also changed up a little bit of her interactions. But she's still good on the peel side of things. It's just a very hard hero to learn if you're new to the game. Also, her ultimate is very anticipatory and not necessarily reactive like a sound barrier or transcendence. So I think of all the defensive sustain ults, that's one of the worst, if not the worst. And it's not bad. It's just, that's just how it is. So we're going to defy the meta a little bit. We got the tier break in a tier list that already has a tier break. Blowing your guys' minds as we speak. And on the left side of this, I think these are comps that are more playable. And these are comps that can really work, but they're one-dimensional, can only work on specific modes or specific maps. So we've got the Ana variants of Ana Zen, Ana Moira, or Mercy, and Ana Baptiste. It's just whatever you feel like is best. You got Discord, which is super strong ability. You know, Zenyatta, his damage per match is like 3k, 4k damage, right? But if you add the extra damage that you get from Discord, he would be upwards of 7k damage. That's like a DPS tank level damage output per game. It's insanely good how Discord works. And like the snap kick can't be overlooked, because I feel like that's such an annoyance for dive tanks. So, you know, he's not as vulnerable as he was back in the day, but yeah, like it's still tough for him to live and have some way of protecting himself, because usually it's been a lot of a good defense is a great offense for Zenyatta. That was kind of his motto. But when you combine Ana and Zenyatta as two very stationary, you know, you just can't play it on push. You just cannot. You cannot play on push. You cannot play on control. They're just so vulnerable. Unless your teammates are just that cracked, but we're diamond here. We're going to be making a few mistakes. Your teammates are going to be making mistakes where you have to overextend in order to heal them up. You know, it's just how it goes. On a Mercy, slightly more survivable, but the issue is Mercy doesn't provide any damage or utility compared to Zenyatta. So you get a little bit more survivable, but you drastically lower your damage output and potential. And then Baptiste and Ana, I think this is an ideal comp for those traditional modes, Escort and Hybrid. where you have the set defenders and set attackers. And that's where a lot of these Ana comps really work, is when you play those traditional map modes or map types. So that's kind of where I rate them. Moving on, I think this is our final Moira comp. Yeah, so never moves out of the counter ball, never moves into the top 3 tiers. Yeah, it just sucks for Moira. It's just, what utility do you have? There's just nothing going for you other than the fact that you're survivable. So for push modes, control modes, this is a great composition. The issue is your teammates are spread all over the place. Can you heal them up effectively? Healing output is questionable, can be countered by a single diva, right? Or Sigma or Orisa, because they can eat it all up. And it comes in waves. So even if you use the healing orb, people can damage right through it fairly easily. It's just only annoying when she's trying to duel you. But yeah, she's the worst support. Lucio is the only thing that kind of makes her somewhat viable, because they have similar play styles. They want to play the same way and play at the same tempo, right? Playing this stacked rush comp, but again, team synergy, it's not present in these low ranks. An interesting one, actually interesting too, Kiriko Zen and Kiriko Mercy. Very interesting, because I could argue that the Kiriko Zen is one of the best poke comps there is in the entire game. If you put this on Circuit Royale, this comp is stupidly strong. And you've got the high grounds for Zenyatta to sit upon, so he's not as he's got a better chance of living, because people have to use an extra cooldown to reach him. You know, he's safe on those power positions. And then Kiriko can also peel for him too. Kiriko is a main source healer. I think the healing per second is only like 5 healing per second less than Ana. It's very close in her overall healing. And the damage potential that you get with Kiriko and Zenyatta is just immensely powerful. The potential, at least. But you put this in push or you put this in control, I think the Zenyatta dies all the time. And there's no way of saving him. So that's where I put it. It's just one-dimensional. On the flip side, you got the Kiriko Mercy. So Kiriko she is a main source healer. She can take on the burden of all the healing and allow Mercy to pocket, let's say, an Echo or Pharah, even a hit scan, a Sojourn, whatever it may be. And so this comp could work in push and control, but I wouldn't say it's enough utility and stuff to really work in the traditional maps, where an Ana Baptiste might actually have more value than in Kiriko Mercy. It's just the question of Kiriko's damage output and how consistent that is. Now, as we move on to the quite all right, there's only 2 comps here. We've got Baptiste Brig and Baptiste Mercy. These 2 comps, or at least Brigitte and Mercy, are interchangeable. The glue that holds us all together is Baptiste. Baptiste is the best support in the game. Next to that might be Kiriko, might be Ana, but there's a not a fairly big, but there is a slight tier break in between those heroes. And then there's like a massive tier break between those 3 heroes, in my opinion. And it's just Baptiste being Baptiste. You know, it can deal damage, has mobility, has great abilities, the lamp and regenerative burst, can deal damage, can pop off. He's insanely good. So, and he can take on the burden of all the healing, and that's why these comps have to be in the quite all right, because as long as Baptiste does his job as healer, well, then the Mercy can fulfill a role as being the best pocket healer, pocketing a hit scan or pocketing like an Echo. And essentially, one way I like to think about Mercy and when she's pocketing someone is like you're trading in 2 people for 1 tank. So in theory, you've got 4 players with 2 tanks on one side, and on the other side, you've got 1 tank with 5 heroes. So that's one way I like to think about it. There's just kind of that weird theory crafting that you can have. But if the Mercy is getting poked out a lot, then you can go simply Brig, who's a little bit more self-survivable and provides similar pocketing potential with her repair packs. Like I mentioned before, like her healing is insanely good when you trigger Inspire and repair packs, because you get the same amount of healing as Mercy, normal beam, but you can do that for 3 separate people. And also you have the defensive sustain ult, which can't be overstated. that's probably why they're not in the great synergy, is because they just don't have that extra ult oomph to really push them forward. And I really highly rate those defensive ultimates because they're just that strong. They are those things that guarantee your team guaranteed survivability for that time frame, which can't be understated against like a big ult combo like Nano Blade. Moving on, great synergy. So you'll see Ana actually appear now. We've got Ana Brig and Ana Lucio. These are by far like really strong comps. This is where Ana can find the most value in a lot of different situations because you have those heroes that can peel for her effectively. Lucio's speed alone is great enough for Ana to run away from certain scary situations. And then, of course, Lucio can boop people away. And traditional maps, they really thrive. In push maps, they can be functional. Brigitte 2, really good at peeling. She still provides that, you know, the whip shot can boop the enemy tank away. The bash, as well as the flail and repair packs, can mitigate all the DPS flankers damage onto the Ana. So as long as Ana has a peel, then she's spectacularly good. And her nano is still really good. And I point that out because with someone like Kiriko here, Kiriko Lucio, Kiriko's ultimate Kitsune Rush is kind of considered like a nano for her entire team. The difference though is that nano, you can apply it to someone and forget about them. They have it. They don't need to run into the little, I don't know, brick pathway layering. I don't know what you would call that. But the pathway that the Kitsune Rush has, because the Kitsune Rush only works for a small position, and especially if you throw it up against a wall, you only have like 1 meter radius. So it's a limited nano. I do have to say though that Kitsune Rush is the best ultimate in the entire game, not just for supports. But yeah, so you have those defensive sustain ults from those 3 guys, and then Kiriko, Lucio, same thing, great defensive ultimates. And Kiriko is almost like Zenyatta, at least with her ultimate, where it's a question of, not really a question of, but like that phrase of a good defense is a great offense. And that's what her ultimate kind of embodies. I was playing Zarya at once, and I was overextending a little bit because I was trying to go for the backline. But yeah, through my overextension, my Kiriko pops her Kitsune Rush, and I got enough life that I could sustain and farm up my bubbles because they charge every 3 seconds because of the reduced cooldown times. And here I am running towards the backline with speed boost, 100 energy, and 2 full bubbles. There's just nothing the backline could do, and I could just melt people. Great moments. But that's kind of how Kiriko's ult really works, and why it's so impactful is because it can be used defensively, which is really weird as an offensive ult. The cooldown cycling, I think, is the key aspect that makes that ultimate work. Any nerf to that, though, Kiriko falls down the ladder for all the supports, probably to where the Zen tier is. And we'll speak a little bit more with this composition. Baptiste Kiriko. Baptiste Kiriko, number 1 and number 2 heroes, in my opinion. Kiriko might be swapped out with Ana here and there. And the difference that distinguishes these 2 heroes is, I don't know if I said this before, but Kiriko is like Hanzo to Baptiste being the Widowmaker, where Hanzo has a lot of these tools that not separate him, but in theory make him really powerful. But because he's projectile, he doesn't have the consistency that a Widowmaker does. And so that's the key difference that I think with Baptiste and Kiriko, is that Baptiste is just more consistent overall, easier to play, can get very high levels of value. Kiriko can potentially have more, but it's just her daggers in particular means that she's not finding the most amount of value and damage output. But when you put these 2 together, both really high damage outputs, they both have 2 invulnerability abilities, both have good mobility as well, good, like everything. Of course, they're going to be in the great synergy. They don't actually really synergize. They're just really powerful together. Almost like how Ana and Baptiste were really good in Overwatch 1, because they're the number 1 and number 2 heroes, and they have that secondary tank to make Ana less of a liability. Yeah, it's the same way with Kiriko and Baptiste. Kiriko just has more survivability on her own. And I think that's the key thing that allows her to have that higher peak than Baptiste. Is her mobility is vastly better than Baptiste, but Baptiste is just more consistent overall. And I guess this is the moment we've all been waiting for. So if you guys skip through this part, hi, how's it going? I think, and I usually do this based off of play styles, and I don't think you can really argue that this is not the best dive composition that you can have, or dive backline that you can have, because you have the two ideal heroes for this. Kiriko can peel for the Ana, so you have those things covered, and then they're both main source healers. That amount of healing is insanely good. Ana can heal the long range. Kiriko can heal the long range. Right? Baptiste's only struggle is that he can't heal dive targets as much as those two, or as consistently. And so with that, they have to be the number one. They just have to. Kiriko's survivable, can peel for the Ana, have great abilities, great ultimates. The only lack is maybe a defensive ultimate, but like I mentioned with the Kiriko ultimate, a good defense is a great offense. So that's kind of my thought process on that whole thing. And yeah, they have a lot of pop-off potential. Then I think we go to this one, Baptiste Lucio, because I think this is the best overall comp. You can play this in any game mode and have success. Like defensive ultimate, check. You got damage output, check. You've got healing output, check. You got ultimate, ult fight potential. I don't know what you say. Ult fight, they can win a lot of them, check. Neutral fight, can they win a lot of them, check. So that they kind of just check off all these boxes. Survivable too. So you would have to put that as the best rush and also best generalist. That's my take on that. And then I'm going to put these guys right in the middle, Baptiste and Zen. This is the best poke comp you can have. And so with Zenyatta Discord, like mentioned before, you put that into someone, a tank doesn't really want to push forward anymore. And then you got Baptiste and Zen, who have very similar playstyles, want to play from range. Baptiste can take the burden of all the healing. Zen just does his own thing. Baptiste can peel for the Zenyatta. So all this is covered through Baptiste, because that's just how good he is. He's the glue to every composition, honestly. He only drops down twice to the counterable / niche categories. And that's because those other heroes are a little bit iffy and don't have a lot of utility. But he is the glue for all these other compositions. He's insanely good. Yeah, you just can't go wrong with him. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. This is a long time coming. I haven't been able to post recently, but here I am now trying to do my best. I got finals coming up very soon, so I want to keep my head down and keep working hard and try and get some more out. Any announcements? Yeah, if you want to submit any VODs, you can do so by checking out my Discord. There'll be a place for you to submit your VOD codes and get some potentially free coaching. Until then, I'll see you when I see you. Peace.